Chandler School District, the superintendent of Chandler Schools, the vice principal of the school district at Perry High School, and the stepmother of one of the attackers in Rick Keener's son's attack have all been named in a notice of claim to the Chandler School District for $6 million in damages. Let's stop right here before we get into the meat of the complaint. There are those of you who are going to look at this lawsuit and say that this is the problem with America. Lawsuits are the problem with America. That this is like the McDonald's coffee incident. This is frivolous litigation and a money grab. You could not be further from the truth. This lawsuit would not be here if people had done their jobs. And lawsuits change behavior. When companies like my company that I own or school districts are forced to have consequences for their negligent actions, that's when things change, and that's when everybody else's kids get safer. Lawsuits are not your enemy. Lawsuits are the result of a failure for other people to do their job. So with that out of the way, let's get into this complaint. The story starts with a 17-year-old who was attending Perry High School in Chandler. He was a new student there, and he has long been a resident of Gilbert. He is a competitive swimmer, went to church, was a member of the community, and for some bizarre reason, on the first day of school, he's getting a message from somebody he doesn't even know who says, you know, did you used to go to this other school? Yeah, my friend wants to jump you already. I heard they said you got a big mouth. He starts getting threats the very first day of school. That same student then sends the 17-year-old victim a photo of him loading a gun. Then a student who sat next to the 17-year-old victim, who happens to be the son of a principal at Chandler School District, started making threats. 3 different teens were making threats to this 17-year-old for no absolute reason. One of these teens sent him a picture of a loaded gun staring at the camera. That photo is in this complaint. The 17-year-old told his dad. He lived with his dad. His mother lived overseas. He told his dad. His dad went to the school. Obviously, if students are making threats with guns, schools should have a zero tolerance policy, and these kids should be subject to immediate discipline and investigation. Police should be called, right? Well, the father of this 17-year-old victim met with the school and met with the SRO, the officer from Gilbert PD who was assigned to the school. So the father met with him, showed them all of the death threats. The father heard nothing, so he, very concerned, started reaching out to the superintendent. He reached out to the superintendent of Chandler Schools saying, hey, I'm really concerned. My kid's getting death threats from 3 people at your high school. Nothing. A week later, these kids showed up at this victim's house. The father called 911. The perpetrators texted a picture of the open garage of his home to the child, threatening the child, letting the child know they were there, they were serious. The officers did nothing. Despite all the threats, despite the past gun threats, they did nothing. A week later, this 17-year-old and his friend went to In-N-Out Burger, and within a minute of getting there, he was brutally attacked by 6 people at least. This child had a severe concussion, obvious physical injuries, and was threatened even afterwards that these perpetrators intended to kill him. Gilbert Police Department came to the hospital and took a statement from the victim, who identified the people who hurt him. He identified the people who attacked him. The officer drove to the child's house who had the parent that was the principal. At the child's house, he met with the child who beat the victim, and the child who beat the victim gave a video of the beating to the officer. So a few hours into this investigation, the Gilbert police had gathered a written death threat to the victim from one of the attackers, the victim naming and identifying two of the attackers, including a high school classmate, a video showing the faces of two named attackers and several others, and Gilbert Police Department closed the investigation and said they did not have probable cause. So the father went back to the school. He went back to the vice principal of the school, assuming that these students involved in this behavior would be expelled, if not arrested, for making death threats, for following through with a savage beating, and the father was wrong. The only thing that this school did to protect the victim was they were willing to move the child that beat him to the other side of English class so that the victim wouldn't have to sit next to this person. The school district subjected this child to further harm because of their lack of action both before and after he was beaten. More threats from these same students came to the victim. And so the father did what the father could do. The mother of this victim happened to live overseas in Europe. And he reached out to this child's mother, and they decided that the best thing to do was to move this 17-year-old in his junior year overseas because Gilbert police wouldn't protect him, the school district wouldn't protect him, no one would protect him. The notice of claim alleges that Chandler School District committed negligence and gross negligence by failing to provide a safe learning environment. That Chandler School District participated in intentional infliction of emotional distress by failing to keep this child safe from his attackers, a violation of the 14th Amendment by interfering with parent-child relationships through deliberate indifference to known threats. Case law is cited. It's so disturbing that it takes a set of facts so egregious to rise to the level where you can make a claim against a school district. But the facts in this case are so bad and so obvious that I fully expect that Chandler School District will be made responsible. We as parents should be able to go to a school if our child's being bullied or being threatened and know that the school has our back. Things happen between kids. We know that. We know that kids engage in bad behavior. We also know if their bad behavior isn't checked by adults, it gets worse. And that's what we've got here. We've got Gilbert goons who are children who were allowed to get away with things for years and years and years and years. And what happened? Their behavior escalated. Their behavior escalated to the point where they murdered a child. They didn't mean to murder Preston Lord. But because the adults and the institutions failed to hold them accountable and failed to offer the appropriate guidance, this is what we've got. We've got victims, we've got broken communities, we've got parents that don't trust schools, we've got parents pulling their kids out of schools. We have a lack of trust in our government. We have the local government that has failed to address any of this. You know, the only way that this is getting addressed is lawsuits. Gilbert government didn't come in and say, oh, we should do an investigation of Gilbert PD. No, they didn't. They said, we stand by our PD. They stand by their PD. The school district did not suspend the assistant principal who failed to act, the principal who is the parent of the child who is the attacker. They've done nothing, absolutely nothing. So bravo to Richard Keener and bravo to the Lyons Kelly Law Firm for taking on this incredibly important cause that will eventually make our entire community safer.